I feel very I feel like my guard is very down, and I'm not sure if I feel comfortable about that. Not talk, just saying, like just reporting my feeling of how I'm approaching this.
Uh,
I feel slightly,
Vulnerable?
yeah, that's good. I'm making it basically in a way that's like, well, that was the point, but then it's
Yeah.
always a little bit scary. It's always a little bit
It's
scary.
terrifying. This is good. Okay, great. We're
Okay,
in, this is sort
right.
of classic us, right?
I
Classic
guess
us.
it might be. It might be.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, it pretty
Okay.
much is. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, first of all, let's just rewind a little bit here,
Yeah.
literally, to say
Good.
number one,
Literally. Yeah.
number
Yeah.
one, you look great.
Oh, thanks. Likewise. Back at you.
Thank you, right?
I
I
like
think,
your Adidas t-shirt.
pardon?
I like your Adidas t-shirt.
Thank you. It's
But also
actually,
you, yeah.
I look great. Thank you.
Yeah, you look good.
Um, and you are wearing a hockey sweater, which
Yep.
is the least surprising thing in the entire world.
Right. Right. Right.
I was looking you up on the internet, which I've never
Yeah.
done before.
Okay. How did that go?
And how are you how is it?
How did it go?
It was okay.
Yeah.
I found your like professor
Mm. Persona?
Ariel, you're a professor. You're if someone's like, who is Ariel? I say
Mm.
Ariel is one of my best friends, my oldest best
Hmm.
friends,
Hmm.
and he's a Platonic philosopher.
Good. Sounds good.
Period. That's who you are to me. And your photo is very professional, I guess. You're wearing a suit and it doesn't feel like you at all. Do you know what I'm
Which
talking
photo?
about?
Which photo?
You're just wearing a suit. You're wearing a suit and I was thinking to myself like what is he thinking like in his head right now in that photo? Because then I was like you should be wearing a hockey jersey because you're either in a hockey jersey or nothing
Yeah.
in my mind.
Well, or nothing. I don't I generally don't feel that pressure to be seen that way as a serious thinker in front of my students. At least not anymore. Maybe at first I did, but it's changed a little bit. Time and comfort brings certain changes to that. And so I don't that's not where I feel it. It's more like my presentation of myself to the world, web internet faculty website picture is like that's when someone looks me up, they'll see that. What do I want them to see? But I have a lot of times sort of striven to keep this element of I am not going to be that guy who takes myself seriously. There's going to be little sort of,
But you're wearing a
glimmers of,
suit.
well, in that, but so there is a struggle. So there is a struggle. But I have to say, in the classroom, it's not the same. And
Oh, but in the classroom, but in the classroom, you're still like you're wearing a
I,
pocket square.
I know, but I'm trying to tell you that is something that really feel like it came authentically, but
But
maybe is a
that's
sort of
okay.
side of me that maybe you don't know so well.
Yeah, but why is it? But that's okay. But why would it be inauthentic?
It doesn't feel performative to me to be wearing a pocket square.
Okay, I mean, in a way, I mean,
Yeah.
you're
Yeah,
like
but I mean, you could
I
say everything performative, but
sure, but when I first met you, you
yeah,
had
right,
dreadlocks.
right.
You had dreadlocks.
Yeah,
You
was that
wore
performative? Was that art?
you wore a top hat.
No,
Yes,
no. This is a point of such massive contention.
and
I
you had a
never had
cane
a top hat. I
and a
never had a
cane.
top hat.
You had a
I had a
cane,
cane. I
a
had a
top.
cane. No top hat. There was no top hat.
Yeah, you had a
Everybody,
cane.
this has become a thing where everybody who knew me at that time remembers this top hat, and I did not have a top hat. One thing I had was a sort of a sort of Rastafarian style hat that I had found in the metro, like on the ground. That wasn't on the ground, it was on the like escalator side. You know what I'm talking about? Like the silver rampy thing
I
next to the
mean,
escalator.
it was
Anyway,
thrown, it was
it was
discarded.
on the ground. It was debris.
Yeah,
But I found it and it was reversible. It had a kind of funky purple, like mauve.
mauve. Well, I
right?
mean, it's debatable. I say mauve.
I think a Canadian is more like, especially a Quebecer, is more likely to say mauve. But
Yeah,
then I kind of adapted a little bit to mauve. Anyway,
I
it
hate
had,
mauve.
yeah, fine. And that, by the way, as far as questions I have go, they're sort of about that part of our shared experience of your relationship to Canada, to Montreal, that stuff. But even though I've asked you about that stuff before, but insofar as, because you said maybe you have questions for me, that's what I percolated on. But anyway,
Okay, we'll save that.
yeah, we can save. Yeah.
Save it.
This is tip. Okay, here's the other thing I was gonna say. So I'm just
Okay.
another
Okay.
tangent is
But we should go back to how we both had
we
dreadlocks.
should
That's a
go
good
back
thing.
about what? Oh, we both had
Dreadlocks.
dreadlocks. Yeah, that is good. That is interesting.
Yeah.
Yeah, white dreadlocks.
Yeah.
Um, I'm gonna throw this will be sort of controversial and potentially not hurtful, but pointed. Do you
Right.
think, here's something that I think about our conversations, that
Right.
sometimes this way we have of kind of skimming around like this, like we're doing now, like going
Yeah.
one thing to another, kind of
Yeah.
crazy breakneck, take a
Yeah.
tangent, don't pick up the thread you're on before.
Yeah.
There's this tempo and speed to it, where I think a lot of times we we fly over the fact that we don't actually understand each other.
Sure.
You feel that way too? Do you feel that's specific to your conversations with me, or does it come up a lot?
I mean, I suppose that I'm not sure that I understand anybody, really.
Fair enough. But I feel like it's something to me that I associate with your and my conversations. That sometimes one of us will say something and the other one will be like, yeah, of course. Like I just did it. You said, I don't feel like I understand anybody. And I said, sure. But of course, there's a lot in that. That you could mean a lot of different things. I'm kind of assuming that I know what you mean, and I probably do some, but I think there's a lot of that kind of assuming where we just sort of take for granted that we're saying or meaning the same thing, and then go from there, and it leaves unexamined a lot of those shorthands we're using.
Okay. Okay. Then I guess my question would be then, that's fair. Well, what is it that you
Maybe I'm the one doing it. I might be the
feel?
one doing it more.
Hold
Yeah.
on. Let
Yeah.
me say this. What is it that you feel, just like I think it's a
Yeah.
feeling thing.
Yeah.
Like
Yeah.
what is it that you feel about our conversation? And maybe it's a speed thing. Maybe it's like
Yeah.
maybe that is it, that
Yeah.
like, but then there's got to be somewhere in here in this
Yeah.
historically that like
Yeah.
leaves you feeling unseen personally, or do you worry that I feel
No,
unseen?
no, I don't think it's either of those. I think it's more like, okay, I think I can connect it to a fear that I have.
Okay.
I think that I maybe fear. Okay, here's a fear that I think that I have that is pretty deep seated. I think I fear that if people really knew me, they would hate me. That they would like not just hate, but condemn. Condemn me to death.
To death.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, that's the sort of fantastical, phantasmagoric kind of like half-conscious fear that I have, is that people would not think I was worthy of living. This is the extreme version, but like that's going on a lot of time. And I think when it comes to this element of our relationship, my there's a fear going on for me that we get by because I am letting you presume that we agree about things, that maybe if I slowed it down and and insisted on clarifying what we were both saying, that we would be so much at odds that you would hate me.
So you're worried that in some way it's like you're worried because you're trying to almost like confirm this like one of your bad voices in your head, one of your scary voices in your head, that there's like a lack of confirmation. Because I mean, it's funny because I feel the opposite about our friendship. I feel very understood and seen by you. That's the very rare kind of thing that I have in my life. So I don't know. I mean, we're very different people. So it's, but it's almost as if you think that like in this relationship, I'm not seeing you. But if I did see you, I
Mhm.
would hate you and want you think maybe you should be killed, extinguished.
Yeah, yeah,
I
annihilate.
mean,
Yeah,
I
yeah. I
mean,
mean, yeah,
I think,
it's in there.
okay,
It's in there. But to like alleviate some of the pointedness of that, it's not just you. But
okay.
it's like this is like a thing for me that I
Yeah.
am somehow worried that that I don't deserve to live. And
Mm-hmm.
that if people only saw the whole of me, they would see that.
Yeah.
And that I'm kind of skating by presenting myself in a way to people that is agreeable to them. But and that I do a good job of it. So I think I have a lot of goodwill from people and people
Mm-hmm.
like me. But there's this feeling like, yeah, but that is sort of based on an illusion I put up for them. And one flip side of that is I think when I have the feeling like someone really knows me and really appreciates me and likes me, that's a very kind of moving feeling for me. That feels like, oh, maybe I do deserve to live.
Do you think that do you not get that
No,
with
and in
me? And
fact,
that's fair.
yeah, well, like when you just said that a moment ago, like that you feel seen by me, and that I forget exactly what you said, but something along the lines of just your real valuing of me and our friendship, that had that effect on me.
Mm-hmm.
It can almost in some moments in the right context, it can kind of give me a chill. It can make me choked up. It
Mm-hmm.
was so it's that kind of feeling. But at the same time, I do feel like that feeling can come and move me. But then when it passes, it's replaced again by, yeah, but that's because she thinks of you in this set of ways that you've allowed her to think.
Right.
And if you saw something deeper, it would change. It would change your feeling towards me. You would vote to condemn, vote to
And
kill.
then that just all everything you just said, that has then like an effect on how you feel, right? Just I'm just trying to
Yeah, for
understand
sure.
the like impl like the consequences of those, that because there's a world where like I mean, yeah, everyone around us, around you, will think of you in different ways at different times, right?
Yeah,
It's changeable, right? But and
yeah,
you could be
yeah,
the kind of person who doesn't care, right? Like
yeah,
you could be seen, not seen. It's like so it's sort of like
yeah.
what's happening on the outside is not maybe the most important. It's just sort of how changeable you are to what you think other people are thinking and what that like it matters to you because there's a like I don't know. Do you know what I'm saying?
Yeah,
It's like
yeah. But
that's
I
the
think
thing.
yes, but how it matters is specific, and I'm not sure if what you're saying is what I'm saying or not, which is sort of typical of what I'm describing. But it, I don't know. It's like on one hand, on the other hand. On one hand, in some ways, I I clearly am seeking some sense of self-worth by what people think of me, because when I think they really know me and love me, that moves me deeply, and some kind of sense of self-worth is coming from that. On the other hand, it's not exactly there are other times when what it feels like is hmm, I have to somehow the character of this fear that I will lose every connection and be set off on an island to die somehow, like that I will be completely abandoned and isolated.
But if I tell you that I understand that fear, are
Yeah.
you like, as if?
Hmm.
Like, is that what you're thinking?
Well, I guess I'm skeptical as an initial response, but not for any intellectual reason, just as a sort of reaction feeling. I do feel alone in this feeling. So
Really?
yeah, yeah, I think so.
Intellectually, you don't think that the majority of human beings
No,
on the
no,
planet?
intellectually, if you ask me, I think I would have to say probably I'm not at all alone. Probably lots and lots and lots of people
Yeah.
feel this way. But I
Yeah.
think as a reactive sort of response,
Yeah.
my thought is, my feeling is like probably not. Probably you don't feel like me. Probably it's different.
I mean, but it is
Because
different.
I think,
Of
and I
course
think the
it's
reason
different.
but I think the reason, like what's behind that reaction and feeling is this part of your brain that always says, no, but in my case, it's real.
Sure.
You're just kidding. I mean, you're fine. Everybody loves you. You're okay.
Hmm.
You have nothing to worry about. I'm the one who's in potential real danger.
Hmm.
And that's why I think it feels different. I mean, that's the part of me that reacts skeptically to you saying I have the same thing. But it is a very powerful thing when you can see someone else having really exactly the same experience and see that in them it's not true, because then that kind of reflects back and it feels like, shit, is that what's going on with me? It's not true for me either. I'm not really
Hmm.
in danger. I'm not, nobody is gonna, people really do love me.
I mean, just to sort of go back to that feeling, like when you have, I mean, first of all, you're in therapy. You've been in, I don't know if
Mhm.
you're currently in therapy, but you have,
Yep,
or
yep.
you are
Still
now.
same guy, one and only.
That guy. Okay. So
For 4 years or so.
4 years. Yeah. And that's been a rigorous thing that you've been doing to deal with
Yeah,
stuff.
helps a lot. A lot of what I'm saying is sort of I wouldn't have had the self-awareness, I guess, to or the particular perspective on myself to say a lot of these things had it not been for those conversations in therapy.
And so do you like when you have this thought that's like, if this person really knew, if they really understood, they would see me as this really undesirable creature who doesn't deserve to live, or they would question my worth as a human being on this planet. Like when you have that thought,
Yeah.
like correct me, I feel like that's what you just said if I'm wrong.
Yeah.
But like when you
Yeah.
have that thought, do you do the thing which is like the classic thing, which I do, and I feel like it's quite useful, of just being like to step outside of that just for like a second, even if it's not, it doesn't work at a feeling level, but it works at an intellectual level as like
Yeah.
an exercise to just say
Yeah.
like, to just be like Ariel, for example, or you
Mhm.
be Vanessa, like let me as a character into your head. And what would I say? I would say like, cool that you don't think you're worthy, but like clearly that's not like a true fact to
Mhm.
me, like
I just kind of feel like if I could do that easily, then I wouldn't have a problem. I mean, that's the problem is I would love to be able to, like, I can try to say that to myself, but when I'm gripped by that feeling,
sure.
there's like a force field around it. Like that, I can't get in. I can't get that perspective. So I can say those words to myself, but it's empty. It doesn't get through. It doesn't change anything. And I don't believe it when I'm saying it. That's the problem. I'm
Okay,
not
well
saying I don't
that's the
believe it
thing.
now. I'm just, yeah.
But you wouldn't believe me then. That, I mean, that's the thing, right? It's like
If
you
I
have
was
to
in the midst,
believe
but
the
you know what that's like. If you're saying like everybody hates me or whatever, I'm no good, and someone who loves you says, Vanessa, that's not true. You're great. But if you're in the moment of that and you're gripped by it, then they're not getting through, even though they're right, right?
Yeah.
Or does it, I mean, it doesn't just get through. You don't just like pop up and say, oh, thanks, I feel better now, right?
Yeah. But it's like when we're talk, I guess there's but that's not all of the time. There's extremes. I guess it's sort of like in
Yeah,
our
no,
exchange.
of course. I'm not talking about, okay, when I say, I mean, it's a voice that in a way is always there, but
Mhm.
sometimes it's drowned out by a much better, more positive feelings of self-worth. And then other times it's sort of there, kind of threatening, but not quite seizing me. And then other times it takes over and
Mhm.
a bad place. But that's,
And do
is
you
that your
talk
experience? Is
to
that your
it?
experience too? No, I think that it's almost like if I when I'm recognizing it as a sort of distinct voice, as I would need to in order to talk to it, it almost would rob it of its power. It's like when it's powerful, it's not a voice, it's just sort of reality. It's just what the world
Yeah.
seems to be.
Hmm.
Like this night for me, this kind of nightmare world emerges from under the kind of surface and presents itself as how things really are. And the problem is, it doesn't feel like a voice telling me this is what's happening. It just
Right.
feels like the world is this menacing place.
Yeah. And I
Yeah.
mean I
So I
think
would say I would say I don't talk to it. Do
yeah.
you talk to it?
Yeah, I mean, I have one particular voice that's just like, you're a loser, failure, and
Mm,
doing what you want to do will kill you in some way. So I guess
mm,
another sort of fear of dying or whatever. But in my case, yeah, it's like if you do this, you'll be destroyed, you'll be cast out, you're just
mm.
like ultimately a failure. It's just sort of like, how dare you? It's like a really like, how dare you, this will kill you. And then it's a terrible feeling because it's like very, very dramatic. But I realize, I guess, in the past year that's like, I can't listen to that voice. And that's also where I'm like, well, that's my teetering on being like a delusional person because
Mm.
it's like that voice is trying to, I know there's like a survival mechanism to that voice, but I have to like negotiate with that voice. Otherwise, I won't be able to move forward. And I think it's like, then I recognize that there's a part of myself that wants really badly to move forward. So there's those automatically, there's that tension between the part that wants to go and the part that's like, if you go there, like you're dead. And
Where do you think the dead part comes from? Why does death have anything to do with it? Is it like what are you imagining? You're gonna just like be poor and like starve on the street or what? Why is
well,
death a part
yeah,
of it?
that's not even it. The practical things are like almost like an entirely different, maybe even a more
Okay.
important
Okay. So
conversation.
what like what's the how do you think the death comes into it? Why is or are you just saying that now to kind of like dramatize it and make it sound more like what I said, or is death really sort of there as
No,
like
it's
I will
just
destroy?
the feeling of death. One of the worst feelings in the entire world is being vulnerable. And
Mm,
the feeling is probably shame.
mm,
And one of the worst feelings I've ever felt, and now I feel it kind of more often, so I think I'm just like better at feeling it, is the feeling of putting something out there that is vulnerable.
mm. Yeah.
That's scary. This is scary sort of for us a little. But then
Yeah.
once you put it out there,
Yeah.
terrifying,
Right.
horrifying, awful. And that's it. It's
Right.
kind of, that's like a snippet of the death feeling, is
Yeah,
basically
okay, so
like,
go back to that. Like, so what for you, well, what's the death feeling? Why is death involved in it? Why is it
no,
not
but
just like,
that
I'm,
feeling of being vulnerable and putting anything out there, I mean, the feeling is, what have I done? Like, what are you doing? What have I done? Of
right,
like,
right,
and there's a reason. I think the best way to describe it is, there's a reason you don't do it, right? Most people don't
yeah,
expose. So,
right,
whatever reason that you have for not doing it, just imagine doing it. That's why you don't do it, because it's terrible. Like, it's not good.
yeah.
But then it's okay. Then it's better because it's almost like like I have to do it, but it's part of like an evolution of my being. So I have to do it, but it's like I die. And especially when the response is bad,
What's the die? What do you mean by die?
I die. My ego dies. The
How
part
so?
of
What
me
do you mean?
that's the part of me that's trying to like keep it together and be approved of and accepted dies. Especially when, because you're gonna have this feeling whether you're received in the way you want to or not. But for the most part, in my experience, I have not been received. Period. And I mean, that makes it even worse because then you question doing it again. I mean, in some ways, I'm crazy because I just keep doing it. But like, do you know what I mean?
Kind of, but I'm still focused on death because you can fear like being outcast and shunned and mocked, but none of those things is the same as dying.
But it feels like dying.
But how would you know? Or
Mm,
I'm
I
saying like why
Not
how is
physically dying,
right
egoically dying.
egoically?
It feels
But
like
why call that dying? Like what is the death
because I'm
part?
not the same person I was. Like that's it. There's a real difference.
Yeah.
There's a real sense of like being out there and unprotected. And I guess it's like you're never out there because you can keep going more out there. But like it's I just remember one time. The first time I remember feeling the feeling was when I sent a version of my thesis film years ago to somebody. And for whatever reason, anyways, they also never ended up responding to it. But it was like someone whose opinion, it was like, once I do this, like I've put something out there. And it was when I realized that I grinded my teeth for the first time. And I woke up and I had grinded my teeth so badly that I pulled a muscle in this side of my face. So all of my muscles were exploded. And that's when I realized that that's when I like saw the physical
Mm-hmm.
effects of it. And
Mm-hmm.
that's when I don't know, I always tie it to that moment where it's like, oh yeah, that's the feeling. It's like that's the fear. But usually I don't know, it just feels like the worst feeling ever.
Mm-hmm. I mean, I hear all of it, but I have a sort of fixation on this question of why dying has anything to do with it. But let me say this, I'll just to kind of say something on my own side, which because I think that I have an initial answer to the question on my own part, but that it doesn't um but then I think you could just continue to push the question and I probably don't have clear answers. But I like for me I think it feels pretty clear to me that um I feel super vulnerable, but um that being the being the descendant of a Holocaust survivor makes it is it just shapes so much. And like when I say I worry that the world is gonna condemn me to death, that I'm not worthy of living, a lot of it is connected to that. Or at least kind of symbolically, at least in my head. It feels like, it's got a kind of survivor's guilt element. Like,
Mhm.
I'm here. Why do I get to be here? Everyone died. And like, and not only that, but I'm here because my grandfather was this in my mind, even though I kind of, again, intellectually, I sort of can see this is something that my mind is doing. It's not exactly true, but was this sort of like superhuman person that not only did he manage to survive concentration camps and I mean everything, just without going into it all, but you know, everything. But then he like resumed life and was by all accounts like a happy, well-adjusted person and raised a family.
Mhm.
And it feels to me like I could not do it. I don't think I could. I don't think I would succeed. I don't. And it's just how there's this feeling of needing to be worthy of the suffering he endured, needing to kind of like justify it in my existence. I need to be sort of good enough that because in a way it feels like I get to live because he was that great. And I have a responsibility to sort of, I don't know, to make his suffering not have been in vain. And there's some part of me that feels or thinks when I am ashamed of myself in some way that I'm just I'm falling short of that standard and kind of letting down this, letting him down, letting myself down, sort of failing to carry that torch in a manner that's worthy of it. And so the like so on one hand, the feeling of like I will be condemned to death has this very kind of real element of being an echo of like all these people were killed, like his whole family was killed. And there's no reason I couldn't also be thought worthy of death by, that the whole world around me could turn on me and decide that I deserve to die or should die or would be better off if I died. Yeah, I don't know. So I guess I kind of wonder what goes on for other people. Like when you think about like you would die, like it's death, like death is somehow involved in the fear. Why is it death for you? What does that mean to you? That makes sense. I don't know if I'm making any sense. I can't read you.
It makes sense. I mean, I guess trying to sort of like qualify the death feeling for
Yeah.
different people is interesting.
Right.
That's a fair
Right.
question.
Yeah.
But I guess to sort of like put my own internal
Yeah.
workings to the
Yeah.
side,
Okay.
um, and just to think about the story that you're
Yeah.
telling about your
Vision.
grandfather and like
Yeah.
how you think about your own death feelings
Yeah.
internally.
Yeah.
Um, I think it's interesting that like it's a story of suffering and
Yeah.
then of resilience.
Yeah.
And then you seem to have like this kind of disbelief at that ability to be
Yeah.
resilient and
Right.
to spin a life of meaning and
Right.
happiness and warmth from such like unimaginable
Right.
tragedy.
Right.
Um, and then when you talk about like feeling sort of like unworthy in relationship
Yeah.
to his story,
Right.
I guess the question is kind of like there seems to be a focus on the suffering
Yeah.
and like the resilience is what's like not imaginable to you really.
Yeah.
And so I guess and can you just because you kind of say like, oh, I feel like unworthy in comparison to his suffering, in comparison to what he went through, but it's like, what about the resilience? Like, what about that? It's just like, that's I'm just reading your read of your own story. I'm just hearing your
Yeah.
story. So it's
Yeah.
just kind of
Yeah.
like there's this like real beauty and life energy, so to speak, right? Life force that
Yeah.
allowed him to be this person that you admire clearly, I guess,
Right.
in some ways. And like that's like amazing. I mean, if you that's the most beautiful
Yeah.
thing in the world.
I,
Like
I
maybe.
know. I know. Like my when. By the way, so I feel bad because I don't. What I'm doing is I'm saying things to you because I want to share them with you. I'm not sure. I'm not saying them because I made any kind of decision that I want
No,
to
I
share
know.
them more broadly. So we'll figure that
Yeah.
part out. I assume we're going to
Okay.
figure that part out. Okay.
We will.
But like so my dad um as a result of this, by the way, like my when I at one point early when I was doing therapy and I was talking to Rachel about it,
Mm.
and she said, um, so like what do you talk about? And I thought about it and I said, well, mostly my dad.
Uh,
And that seemed to surprise her a little bit.
mm,
Like I think she expected it would be more talking about my mom,
yeah.
like a Jewish boy talking about his mom. I don't know,
Yeah.
but making you laugh. But but um, but it's all about my dad, and because of this all, I think, and I'm sure there's like mom stuff too. It just like does not get through. And, and anyway, so at one point in the last few years, he I don't know if he found or if he had always knew it was there but hadn't looked at it in a long time. But in any case, he dug up and then translated into English a letter that his father had written. Um, basically,
In
long story,
Swedish.
in Swedish or yeah, probably in Swedish. Although it could have been. I mean, he was Polish,
Oh.
but he was Polish and that's why he was. But and then after the war, as a refugee, he went to Sweden. But so then he learned Swedish and raised his family
Hmm.
in Sweden.
And this is
Anyway,
the father you're talking about, your dad's dad?
yeah,
Okay.
that's a good point. Yeah, he's yeah
Grandfather, I mean, yeah.
yeah my grandpa. So anyway, long story short, it's a letter detailing his experiences in the Holocaust and
Hmm.
at least some of them. And so we talked about it a little bit, and all I'm going for, I'm saying this only just to capture one thing that my dad said and my reaction to it, which is at some point my dad said, you know, um, something to the effect of, that really it's a story of, I don't know if he said the resilience of the human spirit, but something like that.
Hmm.
I don't know if it was resilience that he said, but it was very much that sentiment. And on one hand, I can't help but recognize the truth of that. But it's really hard for me to focus on it, as you're saying. And I don't think I've
Hmm.
thought about what you're saying before, but I think I'm just sort of like pulling out something that I think really confirms it. I think it's really true. I really have trouble focusing on the resilience as opposed to the suffering. The suffering consumes me. And what I could take from it that would be affirming. I don't know why that's just, I can't. It doesn't happen. It hasn't happened.
I mean, you obviously get something from focusing on the suffering. Whether,
I mean, what do you mean? What do you mean?
I don't know, I think I have a tendency now to think that like whenever I see something about myself, even if it's whatever, good or bad or problematic or whatever, it's like you get something from it. It does something.
Yeah.
So it's like whatever that thing is doing,
Yeah. Like I'm seeking it.
you're seeking it. Yeah,
Yeah.
you're
I'm drawn towards it somehow or
yeah, like it's something that you want to dance with.
yeah.
Otherwise, you wouldn't be dancing with it. Like that's the thing.
Yeah.
So, but I'm sure in a lot of ways, it's kind of there's a lot of good things that have kept you, that have made you like deep and
Yeah.
interested in
Yeah.
life
Yeah.
and
Totally.
like the kind of person you are because of that,
Yep. No question. No question. Yeah. I think that's all true.
but also other stuff.
Yeah. It's also what makes everything hard. I mean, I don't. I'm I don't think it's quite right to reduce everything to that. Like there's childhood experiences and there's
Yeah,
all
of
kinds of
course.
stuff.
Yeah.
But it's like I think that for a long time,
You mean the
it
Holocaust?
yes.
Yeah.
And
Or
yes,
your grandfather?
and my connection to it. Yeah. But yeah, it is the Holocaust, but but somehow it's my own like there's something about me needing to figure out like how to deal with it, like how to accept it that has been some kind of lifelong struggle for me. And it's not for everyone, by the way. Like, I seem to be the only one in my family, incidentally, of my brothers and my dad, who is like tortured in this way about it. But, um, which also means that somehow, like, there's something else about me too. But,
What do
but
you
at some point, it became kind of clear to me that it had been haunting me without me knowing it kind of my whole life. And I had been sort of just deflecting it and shrugging it off like it wasn't haunting me, but it really was. And so I don't know, like like I say, it's not the only thing, but for some reason it's where I now anyway always find myself starting as like, well, this is the first thing you have to understand about me. Like this is sort of what's coloring everything. This is what I can't figure out how to deal with. This is like,
I I mean, I'm gonna say this, maybe this is gonna, I don't know how this is gonna come off, but I mean, it is interesting to me. Like, you know that like your mom is obsessed with it.
yeah, yeah. But obsessed, but not
Like
sure. But
it's your mom's whole thing.
well, it is and it is, and I mean, e- I
I mean,
mean,
I could be wrong. It just strikes me when you say nobody else in my family. That
but no,
seems
but she's
to,
not. But she does not have the experience of being paralyzed by it like I do. Like she,
and you know this because you've talked. I guess I guess
yeah,
without going into
yeah, okay,
that, I
yeah.
guess the question would just be, I
Yeah.
guess the question is like, have you talked to her about like, is that something you
Yeah,
guys
yes,
have?
totally.
Okay, so
Yes,
okay.
totally. But it sounds like you've talked to her and you got a different impression, which is fine. You can share
Yeah,
it
I
or you
have
can
talked to
not,
her.
but
I mean, the
yeah,
only reason I
yeah.
say it is because like when I
You think we sound alike on this.
I think you sound like so much more similar. Oh shit. I
Mm.
think you sound a lot more similar than you are conveying to me. But also, I
Mhm.
don't know. This is
Fair
me.
enough, but I'm putting that, yeah, that's fair enough, but and you're probably right. Um so it's interesting because it means that I also have a feeling of being isolated within my own family.
Yeah.
Um, and maybe it's that I take certain things that people say and that make me feel disconnected from them and put so much weight on those things. I mean, like, oh, you're not thinking about this at all. Like, you're not having this experience. I mean, I to try to begin to describe her, I don't. This is just therapy, by the way. But anyway,
No, it's
uh,
not. It's not therapy.
okay, all right, sorry.
It's an
Uh,
interview. It's just the thing we're doing. We're sharing. It's an interview.
we're sharing, yeah.
It's beautiful.
Yeah, it is. I mean, it is, but our friendship is beautiful, and this is what it is, right? I
Mm-hmm.
think.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yeah.
Um,
How
yeah,
therapy works
yeah,
is it's a focus on you, like a container for the subject, right?
yeah. Mm.
To explore that
Mhm. That's true.
subject's particular situation, their world, and there's something very
Yeah,
inappropriate about in that situation, the therapist,
right.
most part, or the other part of the
Yeah, yeah,
person involved in the fucking engagement to like bring in their own sort of
right, right.
worldview, right?
Yeah,
But the difference between that and life, let alone this
you,
interview, is that you have all of these fucking individual spheres just bumping around. Like talking to people. It's like when people are talking about what's wrong with them, it's often not helpful to give your advice or to relate and say, like, I've been there, right? You want to just have like, so in this situation, like, I'm not trying to say that I have any idea really what it feels like to be you or to try and like take anything away from like your unique existence. But I think when it comes to themes of vulnerability, connection, why we do what we do, there's like simultaneously the same. Simultaneously, I can relate to you. I can feel that, but also I'll never understand it or really
Yeah.
grasp it. So I'm not trying to take anything, all to say, like, I'm not trying to take anything away from you, but I think the the fear of being really seen and what is there and being like all of the things around connection or I don't know, depth. That's it's a I think that's a thing you can talk about broadly because people have relationships to that, even though it
Yeah.
might not be like yours.
Yes. I sort of have based my own approach to all of this on the notion that there is actually a deeper, concrete,
Mm,
rationally graspable
right.
human nature that um that does that is universal. But at the same time, for some reason, I find myself saying in the context of this interview that what I feel like I am describing about myself, I have this big resistance
Yeah.
to yeah, to acknowledging it, that to acknowledging the universality of it. Or there's some part of me that wants to say this version of this experience that I'm having has certain roots that are common, but for some reason I'm immersed not in those roots, but I'm sort of swimming in the particular experience that as it presents itself to me. And there's something about that that makes me very resistant to acknowledging the commonality of it or whatever. I mean, for some reason we're talking about what are the points of that we share and what are the things that separate us all from each other. But and so I have my own, I guess I'm saying there's a way that I have come to think about my answer to that question, which is for better and worse, very set.
You mean in terms of like a real understanding of human nature?
Yeah,
And
just what the connection is between the study I've taken up and kind of dedicated myself to for so long and my own experience. Like I have a very particular, that relationship is very, I mean, it's again this sort of intellectual grasp versus immediate feeling sort of
and they do fit together,
distinction.
or you have a way of making peace with that they don't really fit together for you.
I guess I don't know the answer. I
Mm.
think I guess I guess I guess all right. Uh, I think that I embarked on the whole thing, not realizing how much I was hoping for a solution to the very particular things I was going through. And I think those hopes were misplaced in a lot of ways. That I wanted Plato and philosophy and Socrates to be an answer to something for me. And um, but that in the process, I wound up discovering that even though it wasn't the answer to the specific particular thing I was going through, it was very deep and more impressive and more enlightening, I thought, than anything else I saw or found. But there's this,
Why?
well,
Briefly.
I mean, the why of why it was more impressive than anything else I thought I found is just because nothing else persuaded or impressed me so much. I mean, because it seemed to me that it had the kind of the fundamentals of human life, psychology, morality, politics, longing that it identified, and the way that it seemed to understand what the biggest questions are and how a person is best invited and led down the path of asking and answering them. Just has always seemed to me to give a fuller, more complete picture, both of myself and of everything else that I see than anything else, than any other account. I mean it, and I guess it to name a few of them, that it makes the longing for beauty and nobility such a deep and kind of primal root, that it connects that to a kind of concern for our mortality and a desire to be in touch with some kind of eternity, and that it insists that somehow morality and our desire for morality or justice is also bound up in that as another sort of primal root. I think the way that it weaves those together and suggests that the complexity and difficulty of that mixture explains so much that is otherwise so confusing, strikes me as I'm compelled by it. I find it explains more than anything else about myself and the world. And yet, there's something about the particularity of what I was trying to resolve in myself, of my experience, what I was hoping to be able to achieve personally, that I think I was wrong to hope that it would resolve that for me. And somehow I have found that what it is that I need to be more at peace with myself turns out to just be something else. And for some reason, like, it can be a helpful illumination at times to have this intellectual view of how what I'm going through is an expression of these roots. And I think that it is, but there's the personal struggle of kind of emerging from the quicksand of it is somehow not really helped by that intellectual perspective. And um, and I don't know, there's a way of being kind of mired in the particularity of it that leaves me sort of unable to use that objective universal framework to allow me to feel connected to anyone else in it. It continues just to feel so particular and so isolating. I don't know if that is a coherent answer in the end, but
I think it's very coherent. Um, and I think also I just want to like thank you for being so vulnerable. And it's kind of surprising to me. And I think it's very weird that I'm having this thought right now, considering how we started talking, because I think one of the like issues with our friendship, and I've always thought of this as like a productive issue, but I think that I've always been like pretty frustrated with you.
Mm.
And I don't know if I think you have been frustrated with me at times.
At times, yeah.
Yeah. But I think that I've always been particularly frustrated with you. And I'll say I'm grateful to have been frustrated with you on this level because it means we were discussing at this level. So it's like
Yeah.
nice to be able to even be frustrated with you. But I
Yeah.
think that like I've even back in the day in
Mhm.
college, like when I
Mhm.
was not this person at all, I was not conscious of this way of thinking. But like, and I don't, we were different. But
Yeah.
like, there was always an aspect of me that was like, and we were always sort of like philosophically minded, but I was always trying to like fuck you up a little bit. I think that there, I think there was always an aspect of the like
Yeah.
assuredness of
Yeah.
your philosophical of the way of both your intellectual path, but also of you as
Right.
a person that
Right.
I was always very like bothered by, I think.
Yeah.
And I think I would try to argue with you at an intellectual level and sort of pick
Yeah.
apart your way and your
Right.
canons of thinking. But then even as a person,
Right.
take your mask off,
Right.
like trying,
Yeah.
I would be critical of you as a
Right.
person at times,
Right. Right.
pretty
Right.
openly.
Yeah.
And I think,
Yeah.
and I never meant to, that was never like something is wrong with you, Ariel, but that like in your core, I never thought that. But I think there was always something in me
Mhm.
that maybe felt actually kind of unseen by you, this like essential unseenness, because I was always trying. Like I also agree philosophically. Like I
Yeah.
always kind of admired your thinking and your way of thinking and your way of being. And but there was always like this
Yeah.
like underlying kind of like just sludge of it all that I felt like you didn't want to let in. And maybe that sludge is like internal. And I feel like maybe what's kind of cool about this conversation or even this moment in
Mhm.
time is like the acceptance of of both of the things or the different
Mhm.
things that we have leaned on
Mhm.
of ourselves, but
Yeah.
like that there's I don't know if that's making
No,
sense.
yeah, yeah, totally. I mean, I definitely think that I have often, people do this. They try to address their own sort of insecurity by finding ways to be the source of that same insecurity in other
Mm,
people.
mm,
And I think I've long done that. And like that I think at a basic level, there's something that I've always been so afraid of. And somehow have tried to convince myself that I'm not afraid because I feel like I shouldn't be afraid and I'm not allowed to be afraid by seeing if I can simultaneously convince other people that I'm not, but then also in speaking flippantly about all the things that I fear most, watch them become afraid of those same things. And anyway, it's not exactly what you're describing, but
but what is that, what do you think watching them
um,
become afraid does?
I don't know. I don't know, but I think, well, maybe it kind of internally it validates me somehow that like it's a sort of way of showing myself on some level that it is natural to be afraid of it. Um, but it definitely, one way or the other, however much this intersects directly with what you said, I think for me, the clear point of connection is it's been responsible for a kind of um, a sort of a kind of a mask of supreme confidence
Hmm.
that is masking a deeper uncertainty. But as I once put it in a rap that I wrote for Luke, well, for Luke, I mean with Luke, uh, about the Woobat clan in its rivalry with the Shillelagh clan for a movie we never made.
Do you remember it?
I remember the whole thing.
You got to do it. You got to do
Okay.
it. This is how we do it. This is how we end it.
We end it. Okay. Um, shit, but if I don't give a little bit of time, just hold on. I might have it written out somewhere. No, not anymore. Not like that. I don't think. Shit. I rock straight Woobat, yo, fuck the shillelagh shit. When I crack skulls, it's routine like some daily shit. I breach hulls of alien spaceships in the name of killer bees like Shaolin. I'm hiding in the trees, then I drop down, bust out the bat and get cracking, ambush steeds. You don't know what the fuck's happening. Another Wu cause casualty. Who the baddest G? You know you don't have to ask, it's me and my bees, that's killer. We control flows like the tiller. Plus we politicking them Huns like Attila. Rep Rebel ninjas control the block, dragon beats in your stereo, heats up the spot. Here we go. No hesitation. Clear your mind and attack like panda meditation. Trust the bamboo. Trust the bamboo. Engage a battle. Clean shit up like shampoo. Tiger style. So Irishman. Best of Van Moose. Now they gone. Oh shit, son. Yo, let's get it on. Only explosive. A fuck with atomic bomb. Other than that, my woo bat keeping me strong. Like my killer bee swarm keeps me warm like Iran. I know it's wrong, but yo, it feels so right. Like the time I cracked 36 skulls in one night. Shillelagh blood tastes sweet like banana. See me wield the woo bat like a katana. Uh, um, See me wield the woo bat like a katana. Oh, that's the best part coming up, but lady blood tastes sweet like banana. See me wield the woo bat like a katana. Oh, damn.